Hi, everybody. Welcome to Women in Golf with GolfPass. I'm your host, Christine Selen, and tonight I will be having a great chat with Cara Banks. So let's see. Let's give her a few minutes to. Hi, Cara.
Hi,
I'm good. How are
how
you?
are you? I'm good. I'm back in my hotel room at the
I'm
Players, well, at Jacksonville Beach, overlooking the beach, but don't spend much time on
Well,
it
we
this week.
are so excited to have you on Golf Pass for celebrating women in golf. And I know you're busy up there in Jacksonville with the Players, so we very much appreciate you taking the time just to have a nice chat with us this evening.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking and reminding me that it's International Women's Day. I was so busy prepping for the tournament and on air earlier today, and then eventually caught up on social media and stuff. But yeah, really happy to be here and have this booked
Well,
in and to
we
talk with you
are
guys.
really excited to have you. And obviously, you've had such an amazing career as a broadcaster and journalist, specifically in the golf area, golf realm. So, how did you start your career just in broadcasting in general? I know that you started in the UK with Sky Sports, but even before that, what was your first inspiration just getting into broadcasting as a career path?
So anyone in England will know, who is probably not with us right now because it's the middle of the night over in the UK, but there was a TV presenter called Davina McCall who I just loved. She was actually an entertainment host. So I kind of grew up watching her and knew I wanted to work in television. And I grew up in quite a sporty family. Just my dad was a golfer, my mum a skier, just kind of grew up watching sports, and I just knew I wanted to pursue a career in TV. And I actually started out in entertainment, and I was a runner making cups of tea on like a Saturday night chat show. And then I realized that sport was more suited to me, and I loved the kind of history of sport and being able to work on statistics and numbers and stuff. And I got a job at IMG in London, and it was kind of a little bit of a crazy journey, but I'd always done bits on the side. Like in college I did student radio, and I spent a couple of months traveling in Ghana and Africa before I went to college, and hosted like the World Entertainment News on national
Yeah.
TV in Ghana, like really funky things, but that I put on my resume, which always helped me stand out a bit from having tried to kind of branch out, which would be a bit of advice I would give anyone, is that you think you want to follow a certain path, grab any experience you can doing that, because it will all pay off, hopefully, down the line. But anyway, I was at IMG and I started out doing various jobs, and ultimately I knew that golf was where I wanted to be, because I knew it was the sport that I just had an intrinsic understanding of. I'd kind of grown up on a golf course. I'm not a college player, which a lot of people ask me. It must be one of those top questions, but I've played golf with me will know I'm like a 19 handicap. I've never broken 90. I'm very close. But I know the game inside out. I'm not, and that's why being a host works for me so well, because my job is to understand and ask the questions. I don't have to be an expert player. I love the game and play all the time, and should be way better than I am. Um, but anyway, so I ended up taking a role. And again, some advice I would give is, don't be afraid to say yes to an opportunity that might not seem like the right opportunity for you right now, but it can open doors down the road. So I took a job as sabbatical cover to the personal assistant, or I should say sabbatical cover for the personal assistant to the managing director of European Tour Productions at the time. And someone knew how into golf I was and pointed me in the direction of this. And I said, but I don't want to be a PA. And they said, it doesn't matter. It's 6 months and it'll get you into golf. And honestly, it was the best decision I ever made, because yeah, I was there. 6 months turned into 2 years, and I was there Monday to Friday in the weekday, typing up minutes, no joke, organizing board meeting notes, doing all your typical personal assistant tasks. But it gave me the chance to get to understand how golf production worked in IMG. And so I would work overtime at weekends on the Challenge Tour. You can hear me, right? I just put my phone on silent. Yeah. I would go and work overtime on weekends on the European Senior Tour or the Challenge Tour, and I would go out with a guy called Tim Lacey, who became a bit of a mentor to me, and his team. And I would stand on the side of a golf hole with a cameraman, logging shots that the cameraman is shooting. Like, you know, it's so funny to think back to that now, but I had many a weekend, like on a rainy golf course in Wales, when my friends would all be in the pub in London, and I was earning £70 a day in overtime logging shots. But it really taught me how golf production works, and I would sit next to Tim or whoever the producer was often on the way home, learning how he would put together the rundown for how this basically highlight show would be produced, and it would air a couple of days later. So I kind of always did that. And then I never actually worked for Sky Sports. I worked for IMG, who then launched this program called Golfing World that aired on Sky Sports in the UK. So I left the PA role and moved to Golfing World, which was kind of this new age, low budget, first of its kind production for IMG. And I became a predator, which is slang for like producer editor. And again, kind of surreal to think back to this, but I traveled around the world on my own as a one-man band, as there was a few of us that did this, producing my own features that I would then send back via an FTP link to our home base to go in our show. So I would be on my own, say on the PGA Tour, trying to set up player interviews, arrange the time, get the player to sit down, set up the camera, do the interview, ingest all the footage, go home to my hotel room that night, edit it all in Final Cut Pro, send it back. I mean, it was a crazy time. But I guess Sky Sports, who broadcast the program, suggested that the show got a host. And I'd always done bits of hosting, as I said, in my own time. Friends had asked me to do actually the occasional rugby clip for Sky Sports. And yeah, but you know, long story short, I just became the host of Golfing World, and I was then on the road regularly with my own predator. I no longer had to do all that myself, which was because I had some very entertaining moments traveling with all this kit that had to come with you as carry-on the aeroplanes. But yeah, I then I became the host for Golfing World, and I was over here a lot, and then eventually met the Golf Channel crew, and they asked me if I'd ever consider moving my life to the US, and you know, the rest.
It's always interesting that a career path is never just point A to point B. There's lots of bobs and turns, and it's always interesting hearing about people just saying, like, you know, I took this and then it just spiraled into something else, and it's something that you look back on and just say, like, wow, I can't believe I went through all of those times where it's just back-to-back long hours, but it's brought you to where you are in your career. So it's great to look back and be like, wow, I did all of those things years ago.
That's the other thing, is there's no blueprint for so much of this. You know, there's no playbook. It's so hard when people say, how do I do what you do? Or how do I get into TV? How do I do this job? Like there is no transcript. And yeah, I used to think, gosh, I really want to do this job, and how do I do it? And I was like, I'm not going to go to stage school and just try and produce show reels out of nowhere and send them off. Like, I just didn't feel that was really me, but some people do that, and I'm sure it does. I wanted to understand the business and understand the industry and figure out how production works. And now in my job day to day, it's so helpful for me to know how it works behind the scenes for the producer, everyone on our production team, for the jobs that they have, which is just as important as any of ours, because we can do our job without everyone else, because I know parts of the wheel too.
A few of my friends, when they wanted to get into broadcast journalism, it was very much just learning how to be on camera, learning how to speak well, but not much of learning what to do behind the camera and how different areas of just production works in general. So it's really nice to hear that that's something that you recommend for people wanting to go into the industry of broadcast journalism.
Yeah, it's just really important to respect everyone's kind of role in the business, as it were, or in the production or in the show or whatever you're doing. And the other thing, like, if you do want to do hosting or whatever it is you want to do, whatever job, I'm sure, reps are just so important. You know, the more times you can do it, the better. And I was fortunate in the sense that I really started out doing more on camera work when the digital age was kind of just beginning, and a lot of live streams and stuff from tournaments that I'm sure no one ever saw, but it just, we were learning the technology. It gave me a chance to get a load of practice in. And I say to people now, you know, even if it's not a legit stream or production, just stand in front of your mirror with a hairbrush, or just get used to talking to yourself or talking in public. And the other piece of advice I often give is, when people are with us or in front of camera, is, it can be so hard to flick a switch when the camera goes on and think you've got to put on a front. Like I used to do it. I was guilty of it. And my husband now used to always say to me, he was like, why do you like turn on this really weird voice when you go on camera? Like, just be you. And it was, some of the best advice I got, because you don't need to be false and pretend to be someone else. At least for me, I always try and be the same person. I treat the camera lens like another person in the room. So I just treat it like I'm having, that person as part of the conversation, because ultimately I think all the way back to this lady, Davina McCall, who I used to look up to, and I'd be sitting in my parents' kitchen watching some entertainment show she was doing, and I felt like she so resonated with me, just sitting at her parents' couch or whatever. And so I just, because the other end of that lens is just someone watching your show. So that's what I always try and tell people, is just to try and relax and not think of it as a camera, but think of it as a person.
Great piece of advice. So because you've been in the golf business for quite some time, I'm sure you've seen the evolution of golf. Is now, it's definitely one of the mainstream sports. It's being talked about just on social settings. Have you seen this emergence of golf, especially with younger players or just a younger audience, or new females either watching golf or getting into the game in general? You've seen golf sort of build up to where it is now.
Yeah, I think particularly over here in the US, it's so much bigger, particularly for girls, than it is or was where I grew up in England. I think the college sport programs over here are just so fantastic, and obviously encourage perhaps a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of parents, to see if their kids can play college level sport. But the access now, I think, is just, no matter where you are, and I'm sure it's grown over in the UK and in Europe in general as well. You look at Sweden, for example, the Golf Federation over there has done the most incredible work. We have so many talented young female golfers coming out of Sweden. You just have to follow a little bit of college golf or watch the Augusta National Women's Amateur once a year. It's kind of incredible to see. And, so many of these European players now do come over to these college programs in the US. So, USGA girls go, or LPGA, USGA, the girls golf programs, everything that they do, I think, has just changed things for the better. It continues to grow. I think everyone is so aware of, building equality in our game as much as we can, and giving the female athletes as much exposure and opportunity as the men. And there's, I think, nowadays, for sure, a young girl would pick up a golf club just as likely as a young boy would.
Being a college golfer, it's something that I cherished that time. And it's so interesting just still talking to my coach and seeing how much the program has grown, even internationally. He's recruiting internationally more now, just because it's more of it's a bigger sport than it was a few years ago. So I love the way that it's grown. And obviously with the amazing golfers that we have on the LPGA, and I've noticed the relationship between the PGA players and the LPGA players is also great. Like, you have conversations between Daniel Kang and Colin Morikawa. Like, that relationship between the two tours, I think, is great, and is only helping the LPGA when the PGA Tour players also talk up the talent of the women on the LPGA Tour.
Yeah, and I think that's just what we need more of. We need support, cross-pollination between tours. The PGA and LPGA Tour, of course, just announced this new mixed event coming at the end of the year, which is fantastic. We haven't had like a fully official mixed event on tour forever. Excuse me, well, not forever, but for a long time. And I think, the more support that the female athletes can receive, and you know, exposure, and we have such good platform to do that now with social media, and all the players are on social media. So the more publicly, you know, we could have guys from the PGA Tour shouting out girls from the LPGA Tour with their wins or accomplishments or whatever they do, that can only help. And as you say, that is growing a bit of momentum. And I think, you know, things like this mixed event and Olympic Games will probably develop through the years and stuff, can only help that.
Your just past in broadcasting has brought you to the Open, has brought you to the Masters, which is absolutely amazing. What was it like your first time being one of the female interviewers at the Masters? I'm sure that was just something like sketched in your memory.
Well, I wasn't, I don't think, the first, because I've done that the last few years for Sky Sports. So Golf Channel, obviously, and NBC don't have rights to the Masters. It airs on CBS, ESPN, and CBS. And so Amanda Renner, formerly Balionis, does the interviews for CBS. So she's in the room. We're really old friends, have worked together for years and years and years before she does the job she did now. Before I was at Golf Channel, we used to work on a digital platform over at the Open. So it's kind of been really fun for us two to stay in touch and follow each other's careers. And she's doing such a great job with CBS, and now happily married to Bryn, which is awesome. But so she's in that interview room, and don't get me wrong, it is a real pinch me moment, because, you know, I grew up watching the Masters on the BBC and seeing Rishi was the guy, he's called Rishi Prasad, doing the interviews. And it was like this really exclusive room, and there they were at Augusta National interviewing obviously Tiger Woods and all these great players in the Masters. And then I was very fortunate that Sky Sports, who are the rights holder in the UK now for the live Masters coverage, asked me to help out, because NBC and Sky Sports are both owned by Comcast, so we're kind of all one big family. And Sarah Stirk, their typical host, was on maternity leave, so I've done that for the last couple of years. And you know, it was a real pinch me moment the first time I did that, because it was incredible access to have, and just kind of an incredible achievement to have been asked to be the one in that room asking the questions. And actually it was all female, because it was me and Amanda, so it was really cool for us to be reunited, and for us to kind of be flying the flag for the women, and doing those leading interviews at a tournament like the Masters.
It's definitely on my bucket list to make my way up to the Masters at some point, so we'll see. Fingers crossed.
And you know, the first time I went, which maybe was in 2014, 13, no, something like that, everyone said to me, and it was on the back of a 4-week stretch. I was doing Golfing World, and I'd been to Rancho Mirage, to the Women's Major Championship, of course, doing the Popper Pond coverage and everything. What was the Craft Nabisco, now the Chevron. And I'd done, like, this was going to be my 4th straight week on the road. And I was like, I'm going to be exhausted. I'm going to want to go back to England. Obviously a bit different, didn't have kids and stuff then, so I could do like a month on the road. But everyone kept saying to me, you know, you're not going to believe how amazing it is. And I was a bit like, yeah, like everyone, I get it. But honestly, like, I got there and I was still so blown away. You know, I thought I'd just be so kind of over being on the road, but it you know, if you can ever get there, it is just like nothing you've ever seen. It's just pristine, and it's honestly like golf heaven.
So hopefully sometime soon I'll be able to snag tickets to the Masters, but definitely on my bucket list for a tournament to go see. So in terms of just female athletes in general, present day, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers that they're facing, or difficulties in general as a female athlete, whether it's college or professional, or maybe just trying to get into the sport of golf?
I'd say with professional, it's equal pay and equal exposure. You know, kind of same old story. It's so hard, because, you know, the networks aren't going to channel enough money into a product, aren't going to channel a certain amount of money into getting rights to a product if they don't get the number of viewers that they do. So it's kind of a vicious cycle, and I obviously understand that. But, you know, the LPGA has been partnering with, you know, KPMG and the PGA of America. That KPMG Women's PGA Championship was just kind of groundbreaking for them when it came to be a few years ago. Obviously, the birth of the LPGA Championship, growing over the years, having it on network television, having these big sponsors is huge. So the more that we can have network television, or you know, just live golf coverage on Golf Channel or wherever it might be, the more exposure I think will help. And then obviously the bigger purses. I mean, it's obviously night and day between the men's and women's game in terms of purses. And I always compare to a sport like tennis, where it's so much more equal, and they've done such a great job at the Grand Slams of awarding equal pay to the men and women, even though, you know, they play different level of sets, obviously just due to physicalities of male athletes and women athletes playing the best of 3 compared to the best of 5 for the men. But, you know, they do a really terrific job of that. And yeah, I would say that women's tennis is followed as closely as men's tennis. So I think that's what we're all striving for.
Later down the line, we'll be seeing more PGA, LPGA tournaments coming up in the future? What do you think of that?
I'd love for us to be, but honest answer, realistically, where's the space in the schedule? You know, it's pretty overcrowded. We've seen obviously what these huge changes are happening on the PGA Tour, what's coming in 2024, and allowing space for everyone to play. So, you know, they've announced this one permanent official mixed event going forward in December, what's typically been the Shark Shootout, QBE Shootout the week before the PNC Championship. And I think let's just smash that first. Let's get that working, get some big names. We've already got some big commits, the Quarter Sisters, Finau, plenty of others. So, you know, maybe the Olympics will develop over time to be a bit more of a mixed event. But I just think it's so hard because there's so much history with both tours, with their calendar and tournaments that they already have booked in, week out. So I think it would be a struggle to have it too regularly. But again, it's like the WM Phoenix Open or something. Wouldn't want to necessarily see it every week anyway. So as long as we have something in the calendar that you could look forward to once a year, then, you know, I think at least that's a step in the right direction and a nice improvement.
So I mean, you're on air from morning to night sometimes with a lot of the big tournaments. How do you keep up with really preventing burnout from such a demanding day job on camera?
Well, I'm already back in my hotel room. It's 7 p.m. and I will be washing off my makeup and putting on my pajamas when we're done. So, pace, honestly, you know, my first day this week was a very nice 10:30 call time, but then I've got 6:30 call times the rest of the week. So the alarm went at 5:30 this morning and will do for the rest of the week. But I do also have 2 young kids at home, so it's actually a bit like a spa break being on the road to a certain extent. Guaranteed sleep, although actually the alarm is waking me up earlier. But you just got to be sensible, I think, in the evenings. You know, like there's always the social side of these events too, and there's the corporate side. And you know, there was a media party that we were all invited to last night, and I had every intention on going, and I was like, you know what, I'm exhausted, and I went and had dinner on my own, bonefish at 6:30 at night, came home, had a cup of tea and watched some live from and went to bed. So, you know, you just can't burn out. You just have to be kind of sensible in the time, the personal time that you do have.
You have to be able to preserve your energy in little pockets of time that you can find throughout your day.
Yeah, and my husband's in the industry as well, and he's an agent on that side. So it is funny whenever we're at an event together, because his week and business is all geared around the evening and entertaining and social stuff, and I'm like trying to shut it down because my alarm's going at some crazy time in the morning. It used to be like 3:30 when I did morning drive back in the day, and out having like business dinners, and I was like, we might be at the same tournament, but we're on opposite schedules.
So if you could go back and give some pieces of advice to your 10-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Wow, that is a really good question. You know, a lot of this I feel like I've heeded, but just never give up, and keep knocking on the doors. Like, keep being persistent. You know, respectfully persistent, but keep being persistent. You know, keep reminding people, gently nudging them that you're there, because there's always going to be people vying for a certain job or certain position, and if, you know, you hope that people are going to remember you, but when you're starting out and you're 10 or 15 or 18, whatever you are, you know, you're trying to start making a name for yourself or start carving a path for yourself. And you got to be I think the thing I've learned the most that I would probably say to my 10-year-old self is you've got to be your own biggest cheerleader, because no one's going to do it for you. Maybe at a certain stage they will, but believe in yourself, you know, believe in who you are, and don't try and change yourself to suit someone else's idea of what you should be, because who you are is more than enough.
And that's probably the perfect way to wrap up this chat for celebrating women in golf. So thank you so much for joining us. I know that you've had a really busy day and lots of busy days ahead for the players, but thank you so much for taking the time, and you're a huge inspiration for a lot of women, especially people wanting to get into journalism, and everything you've done for golf as a sport. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm always happy to talk or share any bits of wisdom, no matter how small or big they might be. So thank you for having me, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm your host, Christine Selen, and we will see you next Wednesday for another Women in Golf interview. So thank you so much, Cara, and good luck for the rest of the weekend. Bye.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.